Hello, America, and welcome to the program. I know the world is on fire. Last week, I couldn't be here with you because my personal world was on fire. We had a horrible tragedy hit our family last week. And I want to thank you for putting up with Stu and Pat. I mean, jeez. I mean, you want to talk about tragedy, there it is. But I also want to tell you what I learned from all of it. And just allow me a few minutes, if you will, to talk to you about the world in a completely different way. Last Monday, I was sitting in this chair, and Sarah had just said in my earphones, 2 minutes. I had been home. I'm broadcasting from my home. My back is just really bad, and car rides are not real good for it. But thank goodness I was home. Last Monday, 2-minute warning comes. Stu said to me, "You ready for the show?" I hadn't even had time to really discuss it with him. And I said, "Yeah, I got it all mapped up. Just follow me." And that's when my wife came to the door of the studio here at our house and said, and she had the phone up. And then she collapsed on the floor in tears. And I ran out of the studio and grabbed her and held her up and said, "What's wrong, honey?" And she was holding the phone. She tried to tell me again, and she collapsed again, and she handed me the phone, and it was my mother-in-law. And I couldn't get very much out of her either. I just knew that Tanya's brother had passed. To say this was a shock is an understatement. Vince, I always looked at him kind of as an older brother, even though he was younger than me. I looked at him as an older brother because he helped me learn the ropes of being in an Italian family. You know, I'm from German descent, and that's screwed up 6 ways to Sunday. But being in an Italian family, there's some ground rules. There's some things you really need to know, you know, like your first Easter or Christmas. Slow down, Jack. Slow down. There's a lot more food coming. And family. This family, I married into, I think, the greatest family I've ever met, the Colonna family. And I didn't realize, I mean, I know what a change it's made on my life, but I didn't realize how great this family even was until this last week. My wife she's got a servant spirit, and she just serves, she shows her love by taking care of people and doing things, and never says, "Oh, it's too much." I have to tell her all the time, "Honey, don't take this on." Last night she's still up in Connecticut, and she called me last night about the dog food, and she was like, "The dog food, and you got to get more dog food." And I'm like, honey, I got it. Relax. Even though I probably don't actually have it, but my brother-in-law had 4 children. He had wrestled with Crohn's disease for a long time. My sister has Crohn's, and it can be awful. It can be awful. But you'd never really know it. He was always the kind of guy that was always like, "How you doing?" "Good." "How you doing?" "Good." "How you doing?" When he said, that meant horrible. I should be in a hospital. But he was always the guy who lit up the room. He was always the guy helping others. He would never stop because he was always helping others. I didn't realize how much of a servant spirit he had until the wake on Friday. I don't know how long that line was, but it was a constant moving line for 4 hours. I think the line was not in cars, in people, a quarter of a mile. And it just didn't stop. And it was people that would come up and say, I didn't even know Vince, but I met him because I was in need of help, and he just rolled up his sleeves and he just like took over and was like, okay, we got it. It was people in the community that he lived in. He was on the school board. He was a little league coach. He was a soccer coach. He helped build the church. He took care of the lawn of the church. He was constantly doing things, raising money for charity, working over here, helping organize this. But he was never the guy in the spotlight. He was just the guy doing it. And we had no idea how much he had done because he never talked about it. We also didn't know how much mental anguish he was in because he never talked about it. And last Monday morning, after spending Easter with the family, everybody thought it was fine. He got up at 3 o'clock in the morning. He was staying with my mom and dad, my Tanya's mom and dad. And he got up at 3 o'clock in the morning. He went into the office. He put everything together that the family might need. Took all of the things that his children and his wife would need. And left a note on the person who he's worked with for 30-some years on their desk, because they always come in first. Don't go upstairs, just call 911. And he killed himself. This is now the third family member of mine that has gone through this. And I keep seeing it play out over and over and over again in exactly the same way. We had an immediate family member in my family that the police were called to my house I don't even know how long ago it was now. A few months ago. An attempt at suicide. The world is sick. We are sick. When I talked to Tanya on Monday, all she could get out of her mom at the time when they were both hysterically crying was what she thought she heard was, and Vince kicked Dad on the way out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what was that all about? How did that happen? And all day I'm thinking, what is my dad going through right now? What is he thinking about, his relationship with Vince and everything, because that just came out of the blue. I found out that he kissed him on the way out, which was a much better way to go. But I looked at that, and even that was an act of service. To let your dad know how much you loved him on the way out. I know this sounds weird if you don't know much about suicide or if you've never gone through it yourself. And really the only way to understand it is to be close to it yourself. No matter how close you get to it, If you've never experienced it, you don't understand it. Because it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense because it's insane. But you get trapped in this place to where you actually start to believe that the world would be a better place without you, that your family would be a better place without you, that they would have it easier if you were just gone. None of that is true. As a survivor of 3 now in my family, it hasn't been even close to true any time. Suicide has such a long tail to it that even when you think you're past it and you've recovered, that tail comes swinging around and can smash you at a time when you think the dragon is gone. I know what these 4 kids are going to go through because I went through it. I'm speaking of my other brother's son's wedding, giving the father's toast this summer because his father is not there. Let me say this first. If you are thinking about suicide, if you think there's no reason to live, if you think there's no way out, if you think the world would be better without you, it's a lie. And I know because I've been there. I've thought those thoughts myself. And I was lucky enough to have a friend take me to the hospital. I went against my will. I actually said, this is not going to change anything because I know what the problem is. The problem is me. And while I had good reason to think that at the beginning, those were reasonable thoughts of, I've got to change my life. But it spirals down into everything. And if you do it, it's only going to make things much worse. And there is relief. And there is love again, and there is light, and there is joy. You were born to experience joy. Please call for help. Please, if you're on the receiving end, do not dismiss this. Don't tell somebody, oh, well, it's going to get better. Keep your chin up. Cheer up. There's nothing more offensive than that when you're in this situation because they've tried. If they give any indication at all, the good ones won't. They might leave a few breadcrumbs, but in our case, it was a guy who you would have never thought because he's always fine or meh, and he's always helping other people. But he couldn't get help himself. He didn't know how to accept help himself. It's a two-way street. You have to ask for help, and then somebody has to be there to help you. And if you don't know what to do, just take them to the hospital. The hospital will know what to do. But if you're in the situation to where somebody did something, there's nothing you could have done. Nothing you could have done or said. It's not your fault. Now, what did I learn from all of this? Back in a second. My brother-in-law, he helped build this church, and then they talked a lot. The church members talked a lot about how he was always, there was a blade of grass out of place, he was on top of it. He used to take care of the lawn. So my father asked me to speak at the funeral. And, oh my gosh, I pull, in the course of my career, I've spoken about, it's estimated at, what did they say it was, 160 or 170 million words. And some of those have been hard, but I don't think there's been anything harder than this, because I didn't know how to describe him. He was, a brother, a friend, a father, a husband, a son. And then when I went to the wake and I saw and I listened to people, I realized that the word that was needed was not even servant. It was loved. And I've pondered that over the weekend. You know, there are two great commandments. Love God and love your neighbor. I mean, I'm grossly abbreviating those, but love God and love your neighbor. And I realized that this is the biggest thing we're missing right now. So many of us, the fear up in Connecticut was palpable. Now, I know I live in Connecticut, and I could tell those, who had bought into the hysteria over COVID, because I'd say, oh, I'm from Texas, and they would back away from me. But the fear is palpable. Fear doesn't come from any place good, and the fear is not needed. It is not needed. So how do you combat that? And what do we do to save ourselves and our country and our children? Next.
This is the Glenn Beck Program.
This is the Glenn Beck Program. If you've just joined us, I was gone last week due to a family emergency. We had a tragic death in our family of Tanya's older brother, Vince. And I learned some really important things. As I was watching this wake, I'm seeing these people from all walks of life. Some walked by me with a face of, hey, I know who you are, keep it up. And other people walked by like, ooh, dear Lord, I know who you are. Ooh, ick. But they were all there for Vince. How many of us have friends on the other side of the aisle? And not friends. They're not friends. The people that were there because he made a difference in their life. He was a true servant. As I'm watching this, all that kept going through my mind was, by their fruits ye shall know them. The fruits of his labor were on display. He was a servant all the time. No matter what he was doing, that was his priority. And like so many of us, sometimes, our job interferes with the family or whatever. In his way, service became such a big deal that I wondered, when did he have time for anything else? But he found a way to love everybody. There are two great commandments. Love God with all your heart and mind and soul. And love your neighbor. So those two great commandments boil down to love truth, because that's what God is. We've wrapped God into all different kinds of things, and we've given him some anthropomorphic, tangible anthropomorphic tendencies and traits. I don't know what God is. I think I do. I believe I do. But if I get to the other side and, I've said it a million times, a space octopus, I am God, and be like, wow, that's a total shock, but okay. Because whatever God is truth. We don't love truth anymore. We deny truth. We are all living untruths. Every time you put a mask on, you might be doing it for other people, and that's cool. But if you believe that this is a lie, every time a little bit of our truth dies with us when we put a mask on. It does. And I can justify it in my own head because I'm compassionate of other people. But this is not based on any scientific fact. Do you know what the definition of truth actually is? Truth, a quality or state of being true. That which is in accordance with reality, or a fact or belief accepted as true. The last one's the only one murky. And it's always the last one you're like, okay, I think they were kind of pushing that. A quality of state of being true. That which is in accordance with reality. The mask thing, just as an example, is not in accordance with reality. Any scientist can tell you that. It's like a building, if Fauci were building submarines, the mask is as useful as if he said, you know what? We're also going to put, for all of the hatches, we're going to put screen doors there. It doesn't stop the water from rushing in. Maybe it makes us feel better, but I think it's actually doing the opposite. We have lost the sense of, when you love your neighbor, really love your neighbor, when you serve. Saturday, we did a dinner for the family, and there were, I don't know, Italian families, it's like a mob gathering, except nobody's killing each other. Nobody's got a body in the trunk. And, but it's just massive. Everybody is there. And it was my way of serving the family. And I had the best night. How many times have you done something for somebody else and you've come out and you don't know if they got anything out of it, but you kind of feel selfish in a way. You're kind of like, wow. That's where joy comes from. Love thy neighbor. That's where joy comes from. The opposite of joy is despair, and that is the complete absence of hope. Hope is defined as a feeling or desire that things are going to happen. The second definition of hope is a feeling of trust. We don't have trust, and we're beginning to lose the feel that something good is going to happen. That was the American thing. We believed in the future. We believed a brighter day was just ahead of us. That's all but been destroyed in us. We are no longer Americans if we lose hope. And that's despair, the loss of hope. And the opposite of despair is joy. And how do you find joy? You find joy by rooting yourself in the truth, even if that's a truth that you don't want to accept. Accept the truth and serve others. I have to talk to Mercury One this week because we've been so focused on education and we are serving so many on education. But I want to make sure that we don't lose our charitable arm on going in and helping people as well. It's one of the best memories that I have of COVID was helping the city in Detroit. The changed hearts that Mercury One encountered in Detroit. Did it change anything political? No. But it changed hearts. It changed hearts. Right now, if we don't be the people, if we aren't saying, you're loved, just like I'm loved, and it doesn't matter what you do, it doesn't matter what you do to me, I'm always going to love you. I may not like you, but I will be the first there to help you. And I'm not there to help you because I'm trying to change your mind, I'm trying to win, or anything like that. I'm there because I believe family is the only thing that matters. And we're all family. We're all family. If you haven't repaired your family yet, you need to. And that doesn't mean that you have to take abuse. But the only way things will change is if we find a way back toward one another. And that is truth. And remember, you don't tell the truth per se. You're not required to tell the truth if it does more damage. Like, hey, I want you to know when I was a kid, I robbed you blind. Okay, it might make you feel better, but is that going to do more damage? You should tell the people and make restoration if you can, restitution. But just to tell people, oh, by the way, I was making out with your sister the whole time. Not a good idea. Not a good idea. But we have to stop. We have to stop saying that there's nothing we can do. What are we going to do? Well, here's the first thing. Stop living a lie. And before you clean up anything politically, you got to clean up your own life. Stop living a lie, whatever that lie is. And it could be a lie that was given to you by your own family. I was known forever. I think I still am. I'm the stinky little brother whose room always stunk because I didn't put my clothes in the laundry and whatever. I'm the stinky little brother. That's who I am still to my sisters. Okay. But that's not who I am. Who are you? What do you believe? What do you stand for? I think all of the time of what this woman said to me over in Poland. She was one of the righteous among the nations. And I said, how do we get that tree of righteousness? The righteous among the nations were the ones who saved Jews at their own peril. How do we water that tree of righteousness? She looked at me and like I didn't understand. There is no tree of righteousness that you have to grow. You already have everything you need. You just have to say, I'm not going to participate in this lie. I know the difference between right or wrong. I know the difference because I was raised in the truth. Now, some people weren't. And our kids are being indoctrinated. But for those who are aware, without malice, with charity toward all, we have to say, I'm not participating in this lie. I'm not going to go there with you. I'm not, but I love you. And I'll serve you. I'll help you. I wish, as I watched him and I thought, 165 million words I've said over 40 years. How many of those were even important? And here's this guy who has no platform. And he has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people show up at his wake. At a time of COVID. in the Northeast. How does this happen? I don't know how many people would show up. If I weren't on the radio, I don't know how many people would show up, but not hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. I don't even know how many people would show up at my funeral, even though I am on the radio. I have no idea. Because really, what are my personal works? What are my personal works? I don't know. And to me, that's sad. That doesn't save me. But it does save others. And it does bring joy. And it is only by those works and the fruit of those works that people will know who you are. And we keep thinking that that's a bad thing. I don't want people to know who we are. Let them know who you are. And let your legacy be like Vince Colonna's was. Because I know exactly who he is in a different way. Because I saw the fruit of his work.